Flashback. 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 Hey, welcome. If you discovered this show, it is Flashback. iTunes only puts 350 shows up, and we have a lot more than that. So stspod.club, which you can listen to all the episodes there, but I thought, let's do a flashback. Let's put all the old episodes up because archives are an important part of our podcasting empire. That's right, empire. This is a conversation that was recorded in January the 16th, 2017. It was our return back. That's right. Shooting the Shiznit is actually started in 2008. That's right, 2008. This is a return to podcasting with my old co-host and old buddy, Brian Thompson. I hope you guys will enjoy this. We talk about Rasslin Riot online. It's still up on the internet. Just actually type Rasslin Riot and you'll be able to find it. We also still have books. We talked about those yearbooks. They're still for sale. Just search my name in Amazon.com. Some real interesting look at wrestling. Well, it was 4 years ago. We talk about style, and this was way before AEW started and was just right after the Okada-Omega matches. All right. Let's get to the podcast. Let's get to this episode. I hope you enjoy it. You go over to stspod.club and listen to all the episodes, or follow me at comicbookmarkbt on Twitter.
Blog Talk Radio.
Hey, we're live for the first episode of Season 3 of Shooting the Shiznit. I know this sounds crazy, Season 3, but some of you guys might remember this. We had a website called WrestlinRiotOnline.com, and me and my cohort at the time, Brian Thompson, did a show called Shooting the Shiznit, and we bring it back after almost, and this is pretty scary, I guess almost 7 years or 6 years since the death of the Rasslin Riot site. So I should have Brian Thompson on the line right now. How about it, Brian?
Brian, I've been waiting on hold for about 7 years. Are we going on the air on this thing, or what's the deal, man?
Can you believe it? Now, I just looked this up a few minutes ago. Rasslin Riot Online died a miserable death there on, it looks like my last post was May the 20th of 2011. That's pretty scary. It doesn't seem like it was that long. I did the site for 5 years, and if you guys are new that are listening to this, Brian was really a big part of the site, helped behind the scenes more than in front, did some stuff in front too, but was kind of my, I guess the guy that I cried on his shoulder all the time about all the hard work.
Let me tell you what's wrong with the wrestling business.
Yeah, here's the deal, too. I just want everyone to know, if you're listening to it, you go, God, I don't want to listen to, hour and a half, 2 hours worth of bullshit, or horse shit, is like I like to say, this podcast, and I'm doing it for 30 minutes now because I have noticed that the older I get, my attention span is not really good. So when I'm listening to a podcast, whether it's Austin's podcast, whether it's 605, whether it's, whoever's podcast it is, about at the 30-minute point, I say, fuck this, I'm tired of listening to it, and I quit listening. So, and then I'll go back and listen to another 30 minutes. So I said, when I brought Shooting the Shiznit back, what we're going to do is we're going to do it for 30 minutes, and when we have the guest on, it's going to be boom, boom, boom. And just to let everyone know, me and Brian we didn't even plan nothing. We just came on here and said, look, I'm going to do this. He don't even know all my plans for this. If you're listening to it and you're not a member, and Brian is one of the exclusive members, but if you're not a member of the Cool Kids Wrestling and MMA Talk secret, in quotation marks, double secret, wrestling group, all you got to do is either send me an inbox or search it on the web, on Facebook there, and we will add you. So you can be part of the group. So it's kind of like
as Brian knows, if someone causes any trouble, we just kick them out. We don't have a bunch of stupid people saying stupid things or calling people names, and that's why we've been so exclusive. It's almost 2 years going on that, and we only got like 200-something members. Never really try to get new members. So our goal is to kind of take some of the Rasslin Riot people that I had the site with, the Cool Kids people, and add them all together and kind of have a podcast. So
I'm
still with me,
intrigued,
Brian?
man. I'm ready to shoot it. I'm ready to shoot the, as you called it, Shiznit.
That's right. So tell me, Brian, so this, since you have no idea what I'm going to ask you, I'm going to bring you on just like a normal guest, and here we go. So tell me what podcast that you listen to. What would you say? I know you're involved with one, and we can put that over. I have no problem doing that. But give me, what is your, I don't know, top three, and real quickly, why you like those.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, kind of like you mentioned, ironically, about the time frame. I don't necessarily, I've listened to some of Ric Flair, probably Ric Flair, Steve Austin, Jim Cornette, those three, but I don't know that I sat down and just actually listened to full-blown, only on maybe Flair's and Austin's have I listened to full-blown episodes, and I just do it more in spurts. You'll find a YouTube clip or something, Cornette shoots on whatever, and it's from his podcast. Listen for 5 or 10 minutes of that, and you're done and going to the next thing. So I'm kind of like you with the whole attention span thing. It's not something I do a lot, but I just kind of listen sporadically. So I'm, not from an actual, like those guys' podcast, but like Pro Wrestling or PWInsider.com has a lot of their own shows. One called the We Don't Need No Stinking Name show. I listen to a lot of that stuff and get what they're thinking about the business as far as that goes. If I listen to anything in its entirety, those are usually pretty entertaining. So that's my answer, I guess.
All right, and then you do one with somewhat of a famous tag team wrestler.
Yeah, Ricky Morton. We do a School of Morton podcast. Ricky operates a wrestling school in East Tennessee and Chuckey, Tennessee, called the School of Morton, and Dave approached me and said, hey, we want to try this monthly podcast idea out. Everybody's doing one, of course. And said, we think you'd be a good host. I was, of course, obviously honored by that offer, so I took him up on it. But then looking for a name, I'm like, well, heck, branding, let's do School of Morton. I mean, what else? We're trying to come up with something, rocking with Ricky or something, something cheesy. But I'm like, man.
Yeah.
The gimmick, I mean, let's just, if you're doing a total across the board branding, how about just School of Morton podcast? And that's where the name came from. So I have had several interesting guests. We're actually supposed to record another one tomorrow, I hope. So to be released later this particular week.
Did you guys have Jeff Hardy, and who all did we have so far?
Jeff Hardy. Yeah, Jeff Hardy was the very first guest. He was around March or April of last year, so coming up on the 1-year anniversary of the actual start of that. Jeff Hardy, then Jim Cornette, Tom Pritchard, George South. Let's see, who else do we have in there? I'm drawing a blank, but those 4 or 5 right there have been on. A couple of his students from the school have been on. And so got our eyes on Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Can't forget Ricky Steamboat. He was on. So we've got several guests in the works. Of course, obviously with Ricky, with his years and decades of friends that he's made, it's easy for him to pull in some pretty marquee name guests. So pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the roster of guys that Morton actually worked, and which is, I've got a real quick, and I think I've told you this story probably a gazillion times, but it's I've only been around Morton a couple of times, and was able to be around him one night, and I thought everyone was ribbing me because also two of my other favorite guys in the business, and when it came to tag teams, I was a huge Nightmares fan. Danny Davis and Ken Wayne when they were under the mask, and also when they went to Continental and did the face paint and the whole 9 yards when they were baby faces. Loved their feud together, just big, and then I actually become friends with a couple of those guys. And then also with Bobby, the Midnight Express will always, along with Jimmy, be my favorite manager, Jimmy Cornette, and then the Midnight was always my favorite tag team, and those matches with the Rock and Roll, probably overall some of my favorite matches of all time. So here I am, the guy that, I'm a Nightmares fan, I'm a Midnight Express fan, and thinking Bobby Eaton and Ken Wayne are, two of the greatest tag team wrestlers ever, and two really great workers, and blah, blah, blah. And then here I am in the dressing room with Morton, and I was like, Ricky, I just, I know it seems like I'm a mark or what, but I just want to ask you a question, and you just be, front and honest with me. And I was like, you was in the ring with Flair, and you've been in the ring with so many guys, and I'm like, who's the best guys you've ever been in the ring with? His answer was Ken Wayne and Bobby Eaton, and I was like, wait, and I mean, I'm looking around in the dressing room like, someone's ribbing me really bad. Here this guy is. I mean, you think it's going to come out Ric Flair or, somebody.
Right.
Bobby didn't really surprise me, but the Ken Wayne thing did. But it shows you Ricky was of all the people that he was in the ring with, that may have been the two guys that he trusted the most or had the most, the most fun with. And,
sure.
And you could always say, I mean, he was the guy that, took the heat and Robert, did the hot tag kind of thing. So
right.
That's just, and he was and by doing that, and I really think this is the reason he was picked to feud with Flair. I don't know this, but I really think he become, by doing the hot tag, by getting beat up so much, people don't realize that, by him taking such a beating, he become so much over, than Robert did. And that, if you go back and look at Lawler matches and Hogan matches, I love it when people, talk about Hogan and Lawler and why are they such big. And Dusty Rhodes, too, was a perfect example of this. That babyface took so much heat and got beat up so much until they finally made their comeback, and that's why they were so over. And I think that's why Ricky was so much over than Robert.
Right, and Ricky was just, Ricky Morton, I think, will go down as, it's kind of interchangeable. A lot of people would put Ricky Morton and then Ricky Steamboat as your top one or two babyface, and really, depending on your flavor, interchange that 1 and 2 category right there. But, he was just so believable when he would look out in the crowd and say, "Help me." And women were gasping and men were wanting to jump the rail and open up their own can. I mean, it's something to be a pretty kind of basically a pretty boy at the time, yet still have the guys behind you. Because usually the pretty boys, the guys are like, he's taking my girl, that sort of thing. So you kind of get booing them. And the Rock and Roll were able to cross over and still get the large majority of male fan base. I mean, most of the towns, you get in that northeast area and, Santa Claus is a heel. So...
Right. That's that's the part that
it's interesting.
Yeah, Mark.
We had Tom Pritchard,
and that's something you brought up about. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm talking over you. Go ahead.
No, we had Tom Pritchard, a real good podcast. Get a chance to listen to Tom Pritchard on that. Really good discussion. And sometimes I feel like I'm 12 years old, just sitting there listening to these guys in the middle of the chat, and I'm the third wheel on the phone. But they got into a conversation about Ricky, even in his early days before the Rock and Roll era, wrestling matches like hour Broadways with Nick Bockwinkel. I mean, just imagine those matches. Probably lost in archival footage or whatever, but man, you can only imagine just how good they were. So,
well, that you was bringing up that point of Ricky Morton being that crossover with the, we do know that at that height of the Rock and Roll being so over, it was, the higher percentage had to be the girls, but I've told this story, and I don't think I told it here, but even the other, who knows what we covered the first 2 seasons, because I can't remember all that stuff. But I remember in this, we were, and this goes back to being, I was getting Memphis every week. I was there, that was my show. The ratings were so high for Memphis, and in the sense that, every kid on the playground when I was growing up, it wasn't like, I want to be Hulk Hogan, they want to be Jerry Lawler, Bill Dundee, and stuff like that. And the tag team here that was so over were the Fabulous Ones. And this is not anything politically correct what I'm fixing to say, and I shouldn't even apologize for it because I was a kid. Yeah. But us guys we called the Fabs the Fags. And because they were the good-looking guys and all the girls like them. But here's where it made the turn, is the time when and how it turned from the fags to the fabulous ones were cool, not only with us but with the girls, was the feud with the Moondogs. And when the blood started, when they started bleeding and when they got their jackets torn and all that. So that crossover went from, they not only the girls were buying their pictures, then, all the us guys were buying their pictures and talking about how badass they were,
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, tremendous point. I mean, they got them, the Moondogs helped get those guys over, like you said, to the male audience. And so, just a different era. You couldn't, you'd probably get kicked out of the venue or start a riot by saying what you said there.
It is
a different era. I mean, and I don't,
it is.
It's interesting to have that conversation. Because I watched, my buddies and I, we did kind of I won't call it a backyard fete because we were in the basement of my house, so it wasn't really a backyard, but, and we were using some of that slur kind of stuff too back in late 98, 99, and I watched it the other day, I was like, man, we'd have been expelled nowadays if we put this tape out there. So, anyway, that's a whole other conversation for another Shooting the Shiznit podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's the thing about it is that, and we could talk forever, and I don't want to, and I also don't think you're going to have another podcast like we just had tonight, and that's kind of I want people to listen, but mainly I want us to be, like we were. When we did it originally, we were just a little different. We didn't really talk about, and mainly we concentrated on the Memphis area, which in the Memphis wrestling and in that area. But at this point now, that area, except for a couple, I do know they still run weekly shows in the Memphis area. But I would say they're dead. I mean, what's the biggest crowd? You know this more than I do. What's the biggest crowd in that area? You see maybe that Jonesboro crowd that Laura
the Jonesboro crowd
last year?
1,000 something, yeah. So, it's an interesting debate about Memphis. Obviously, without that big anchor that the television broadcast used to be, even in what we were calling the dying days, right? When Corey Macklin.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you go
before he passed, look at the ratings in your yearbook. And even then, even when we all considered it to be terrible, it was still popping 80,000 people at some points in time. I know it got lower later on, but there was a point in time where it was still a respectable number. And the upside is all the independent groups around there could splinter off the television, use guys from that TV, the Derek Kings, et cetera, the Alan Steels and whoever, and they meant more on their local events because they were on television earlier that day or the prior week or whatever the case may be. So just a different beast. I mean, there's a little bit of life to it. There's some groups trying to do things but there'll always be that. So define alive and dead. That's enough. Get Cornette on here and talk about the wrestling business being alive.
Well, I know, and I mean, I
and I agree.
Said this in the cool kids group that not that I would, it'd be hard for me to call Corny my friend, but Corny's always been. Let me just say, Corny's been real friendly always to me. We've been around each other, maybe 10 or 12 times. That's not a lot of times, but every time he's been around, he's been open with me. And had great conversations about the business, and I have all the respect in the world. He was, a lot of people, Jimmy Hart was their favorite manager from this area, but in my all-time favorite manager, it was Jim Cornette. Now, when it comes to his political views or his view of the wrestling business, now it's different because I don't really know how to word it. I have kind of embraced the wrestling business for what it was, and I was actually having a conversation with the wife. I think at some point earlier, maybe now, maybe 2 years ago, at some point in the last maybe 2 to 3 years, what the business, and I know people say, well, it happened a lot longer ago. I think you're going to really see what the business turned into kind of changed during that time. And I had this conversation. I talked to Shane Douglas, which I'd love to have him on here to talk about it, but had seen him in a con. And I talked to Douglas first time I ever talked to him for almost an hour. And this was just when the network came. And me and you've had this conversation. The network we're dead and gone, but this will be considered with the WWE network totally changed what the business is and what we want to watch, in the sense that if you watch the UK tournament, you know, the way those guys work, we're exposed to a whole different, the way they come in and out of heat, the way they stress their finishers, it's just a whole different way of working, and you wouldn't have seen that 2 years ago. If they would have had those guys trained as WWE workers, and you would have worked the WWE style. They didn't. I mean, I seen so much stuff, and I was like, look, this is not your typical, we're going to work at, you know, a certain style. And I think that's what's hurt them. And I really wasn't going to get on this, but the 205 Live thing is the 205 Live thing had X amount of great workers, but then they kind of taught them all the WWE style of, you know, coming in and out of heat, let's do this, do that, and not actually doing something different. And I think that's where they're – and this – I mean, the UK thing, the first night, it was not good to me. It was just it seemed like a bunch of green guys against a bunch of guys that knew what they were doing. And then that the second night was a total different animal. But that – I believe at some time we're going to say, okay, in 2015 when the network, and then in 2017, this is what we – you know, and we just had the big Okada – Omega match that everyone talked about, but there's going to be a standard that was different than the 90s, different than the 80s, you know, and that's where I see it, and that's different. Where I leave. Yes, different, and some of us think, better. You know, is it better? I don't know. I love it. I love the style. Yeah,
I do, but I don't. I see. Here's the thing. I think what is now different, and you and I are different fans than the typical casual fan on the street, so that becomes a challenge. I've often in the past made the error in the business that I have been involved in of booking or thinking to what I like, but it was not necessarily for the average consumer. I think obviously they're opening their door to get the diehards. WWE Network is for a diehard. A diehard is not going to spend $10 for something they could see for free 5-6 hours a week on regular cable television. So I think they're doing some of those things to work toward them. I am of the also opinion that there is an old school style of wrestling that can be presented and still be successful, maybe more so Southern based. But I think it's there, and I'll tell you why. In travels over the last 15 or so years in the wrestling business, beyond my local borders, meaning I've been in 28 states doing this, especially with someone like Bobby Eaton. So for those who don't know, I'm talent agent for Bobby Eaton, so I get his bookings and we go all over. The one constant you get from people coming up to you is, I miss the way it used to be, or hey, here's my grandson, I want to introduce him to who I grew up watching. And they're no longer necessarily watching the main product. But if there were a product that was presented more like they remembered, I think they would come back. I think there's a chance to garner some of those back. You didn't say, you never went to Mid-South Coliseum, use you an example, say, I want to see Jerry Lawler win this match, and I want to see him win it with a pile driver, fish drop, pull the tights, fire. You just wanted to see Jerry Lawler win. You didn't care how he won that match. You were emotionally tied to Jerry Lawler and his success or failure. I think that's where things are missing. Moves don't put butts in seats. Characters and emotional ties do. I think that's where there's got to be some sort of crossover blend, because eventually we're going to start going through bodies like it's dominoes or something, because the bodies can't handle that style of wrestling. ECW worked because they only ran a handful of dates a month. They didn't run 5 nights a week. So
yeah.
I think there's got to be
you see that in guys. Yeah, you see that with the guys.
It's going to be an interesting.
Japan, you know.
I like the athleticism, but I don't like some of the corny stuff. Not Jim Cornette corny stuff, but some of the stuff. You mentioned Kenny Omega. Good match. I watched the version on Access TV on Friday night. Good match, but not the greatest match of all time. I mean,
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, in a sense that I said, here's what I did. I watched the match and I do this, and you know how I am. No spoilers, no spoilers, no spoilers. I watched that match just like I try to watch every other match, unless I've got a real bad habit now of just scanning through Raw and seeing if there's something I want to watch. But I watched that match, and when it was done, I felt the same way I did, 4 or 5 other matches last year. I think it was, and we could talk a whole 30 minutes about the star system, and hell, that might be an episode that we could do. Cornette and Brian Lass on Corny's show had a really good, talking about this, but I felt the match was, in my opinion, in me enjoyment, that match was, 5 stars. I put 5 stars, and then all of a sudden I went to Facebook, I went to, and I see Meltzer say 6 stars, and all this kind of stuff was going on about the match, and I was like, damn, it was a good match, but I don't, and I went back to watch it. But, I also remember, Corny said the first 5-star match was a Funk Lawler bout. That was a 4-star, system, and then the first one 5-star was, and I remember that match, fantastic, Midnight Express rock and roll matches. And then, I felt the same way with Ospreay and Ricochet last year, where there was, and also with Sami Zayn and Nakamura, not that the matches made, I don't know, they just seemed like they were special in the sense that we're doing something, we're changing the way it's done, this is going to totally look different. And excuse me. But there's matches that you watch through your lifetime that as a fan and as a huge mark, you're going to say this was different. This is not only different, but just special. And I felt like that was one of those. Omega had another one last year with Goto that I thought the same thing. And Omega gets criticized for his comedy and blah, blah. I've always been an Omega fan because I think that, I've been tooting his horn for about 2 years now. I remember calling Tony Myers or leaving a message with my buddy Tony Myers saying,
hey, Tony Myers,
what's up with this Kenny Omega guy? Yeah, come and get Tony on here and you won't talk it off. So, look, I'm going to let you know real quick. We got 4 minutes. I'm not going over. We're going to do 30 minutes. So real quick, what's Brian Thompson doing? Are you doing anything on the road? Are you just doing the podcast? Or is Bobby going to be somewhere we need to tell everybody or what?
Well, I just came off. I was just in Lewisburg, Tennessee this past weekend. I work for Promotion Throwback Championship Wrestling. They have television now on a CW affiliate out of Huntsville, Alabama, and CSN 49 in Nashville, and expanding hopefully to Knoxville. So a little 30-minute TV show that I host.
Is that the same guy?
Named Chris Lash.
I know him. I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
Chris Lash. Yeah, he owns radio stations as well. Anyway, he's trying to expand it. So I was on there. Dustin Starr, an old friend of ours. He just won their heavyweight title. So he's involved with it. Some TNA guys come in and out. Crazy Steve was on the card. And so he's got some big events coming up. Then I'm off for a couple more weeks and then pick up the schedule. World League Wrestling, Harley Races promotion, work for them. 1st of February, a couple of promotions around here. Doing a deal in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina in March, Kansas City, Indiana in April. So as you can...
Yeah, we get a little bit closer. Yeah, I'm going to have you back on just to talk about it because I'm really thinking the one that we talked about with the Steamboat deal, I want to come on and try to promote that episode, more outside of the box kind of thing and let everyone know what's going on. I'm a huge Steamboat mark, and if all the stars align, I will be attending that show and want to be, if I have to buy a ticket. But I've never met Steamboat. He's just one of those guys that, unknowing to him, he taught me wrestling psychology. So, and I've told you, I had, some real grainy VHS tape that I got a hold of. that just taught me. It was a school event that he was teaching people, and someone recorded it, and he actually taught me about Babyface Fire and so forth and so on. And as you've told me, he's just the true professional. So it'll be awesome to meet him. But we'll get you back on there and talk about that. We got 1 minute and 36 seconds. Here's what we're going to do. If you are listening to this podcast for the first time, and I'm going to ask Brian to put the link on it. I just had something Mayor say 90 seconds, some sexy woman. But he's going to put it on his page. I'm going to put it on my page. We're going to put it. But if you're listening to it and you're not part of the Cool Kids Wrestling and MMA Talk Double Secret Club, it's actually it's not a club. It's a group on Facebook.
We shake hands with 3 fingers.
Yes. Now, come on now. The secret handshake. I had Dundee tell me, shake my hand like a man, you motherfucker. So that's pretty much what he told me one night when I tried to do that limp-wristed shake. So ever since that day, I never did that. But what we're going to do is we're trying to get more people in there. I've got a whole list of guys that I want to talk to, and just have some fun, do 30 minutes, and not make it just, the same old podcast, people talking. And I think, this went pretty good since we never wrote anything down, and I don't think many people are even going to actually have anything like this on their podcast. So, hey, we got 15 seconds. We're going to get off here. Hey, Brian, thank you for taking up some of your time tonight.
Thank you, Brian.
And thanks to everyone for listening. We'll be back next week, same time, same bat channel.
Woo!